We gather today to celebrate Matt Kennedy's life. We also gather to grieve his loss, and as people of faith, we gather to commend his spirit to God's never-failing care. So we're doing three things at once in a spiritual cacophony of love. Celebrating Matt's life is the easy part. We've already heard three wonderful stories about a life well lived by a Renaissance man who had the nerve to be born in Asia, travel the globe, and land in Harrison. A full life as a man who had three incredible women in his life that he loved deeply. It was my honor and pleasure to be Matt's priest along with the family for 5 years when I was here as, I'm not sure what my title was, the guy who couldn't leave, I think is what it was called. 1 year turned into 5, and who's asking? During that time, I came to know the family, and particularly Matt as a member of our vestry, and as a man with kind of a clear and level head, but also a subtle sense of humor and focus at the same time. I don't know that there was ever a greater champion of two young girls. He was there for them. He loved them, and whenever their names came up, he shone with love and care and pride. So a champion and a guardian like no other dad. Each of us here has various stories depending on how we knew Matt in life. And we could spend the rest of the day and probably several good bottles of Bordeaux talking them through. So we gather as a community of love to celebrate a life well lived. And yet we also gather to grieve a loss. And that's the harder part. To let go, to shed tears of sorrow, to remember, and to feel a gaping hole in our souls. Unfortunately, it's not checks the box and move on, because grieving is the price we pay for love, and it sneaks up on us at different times. So I'm here to break it to you gently. That doesn't go away, and it's something we must manage and live and navigate through, and not pretend, suppress, and wish it away prematurely. But as we grieve, it is my hope and promise that those tears of sorrow eventually will turn to tears of joy. Yes, the family must navigate anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, and the like, and the first time is as hard as it can be. And yet the joy can sneak in there too, even when we're having a good cry. And it's my hope that that will happen when we say, what would Matt have done? What would Dad have said? Because in a mystical way, he continues to be present with us. And that is our hope and consolation, even as we stare down grief as the price of love. So we need to do both, and we need to gather in this mystical circle of love and of loss on this day. Of course, it doesn't end with the setting of the sun. It's something we do and continue to do. And in the toughest days, we simply put one foot in front of the other and trust that God will be present with us. So as people of faith, our final task, if that's the right word, is to commend Matt's spirit to God's loving care. And that's what we'll do in just a few minutes with explicit prayers and hope and trust and faith that God's abiding love is present on both sides of the grave. We know Matt was a private man and did not want to burden many of his closest friends with his complicated medical situation. So that is just a piece of life that we need to respect and understand, because each of us is different in navigating those realities and those vicissitudes of life. But now, today, we commend that spirit to a God who is present with us here and now. As a priest, I take some solace in the fact that Matt died on the Christian feast of the Ascension. At the end of the great 50 days of Easter, in which Christians celebrate and acknowledge Jesus Christ leave-taking from his own most intimate disciples and departure into the heavenly realm. And so Matt picked the right day on which to die. I'm not sure if he was thinking about that in those final moments, but he got it right in terms of that piece of spiritual life. May you all die on the Feast of the Ascension. Be included. None of us knows what lies on the other side of life. But I, for one, know who lies on the other side of life, and that is God and God's presence. In our Anglican tradition, we can have a wide array of different understandings, and that's perfectly awesome. So each of us will navigate that mentally and spiritually in our own way. But I hope and believe that Matt could have belted out that last song as well as any of us and say, all is well with my soul. A man whose family was around him in his final hours, a man whose community is around him today, and with one voice in a few minutes, we will commend his spirit to Almighty God's loving care. That is our task, that is our hope, and that is why we've gathered to surround his family and one another in love. So I hope we continue to say prayers and share stories and tell stories with one another, and let Nikki and Anna and Clara know how much we love and care for them during these rough hours of leave-taking and saying goodbye. At the end of the day, it is my hope and prayer that each of us can say, as I hope that Matt can say, all is well with my soul.